This computer. Okay, there we go. So tell me about your book.
I just started writing a book about my whole situation at The Price is Right and how I got there and the focus it took to get there. And I wondered if I just wrote a chapter that started with you, and I wondered if you remembered the story about how integral you were in me getting the job at The Price is Right. Do you remember?
I think you give me too much credit, but tell me the story.
It was we were working out in Southern California in news at
Mhm.
KPSP in Palm Springs, and it was just before the 11 o'clock news. And this is in the day of AP Wire rip and read. And you had brought over to the Weather Center a piece of AP Wire rip and read copy, and you laid it down on my desk. And I looked down at it and I read it, and it said the date line was Hollywood, and it said the announcer of The Price is Right, Rod Roddy, has just passed away in Los Angeles.
Mhm.
And I looked up at you, and you immediately said, "What are you going to do?" Because you, along with everybody around me, knew my quest to work with Bob
Right.
Barker at The Price
It
is
was
Right.
your lifelong dream, right?
Lifelong dream. I mean, my mom used to have videotape of me at 10, 11 years old in Avon, Ohio, stand in front of the TV set with her black hairbrush like a microphone saying, "Come on down." I mean, I thought from day one I was going to be the announcer. So you said, "What are you going to do?" When you handed me this piece of copy about Rod passing, I said, "I'm calling The Price is Right on Monday." And I did. And I ended up becoming the announcer of The Price is Right with Bob Barker for many, many years.
I have to say, following you through that process too it was nail biting. It was exciting, but we all wanted you to get it, but we didn't want you to get it because that meant you were leaving the station.
Oh,
Um,
nail biting is an understatement, at least for me. Oh my God. It was nerve wracking.
It was. So let's move to what happened today. Of course, Bob Barker passed away, and when we were texting, you were just finding out the news yourself.
Right. I'm starting to get calls from, friends from all over the country about it. I mean, wow, getting choked up already. It's not unexpected, but I mean, he was going to be 99 years old on December 12th. Or excuse me, going to be 100 years old on December 12th. And I mean, Christine and I were all hoping and praying that he'd make it, but unfortunately he didn't. So, we're praying for his soul tonight.
Um, Tell me about working with Bob. What was it like?
Dream come true for me, Eric. Everything I thought it would be. There may have been getting emotional again.
He was a big part of your life, bud.
Oh, Eric, everything that we have and own is because of Bob Barker and giving me that job in 2004. Everything. This house on the water in Clearwater Beach, everything. And he was a great friend. I mean, he wasn't just the host of The Price is Right, this legendary show host. I mean, when I got there, he just embraced Christine and I like, the son and daughter he never had. Wow, pardon me. I didn't know this would hit me this hard. But it means a very lot to both of us.
Um, Expand on that a little bit. What was he like day to day?
Working with Bob Barker was like working with in a master class of game shows and television. I mean, we shot that show in real time. Bob wanted to shoot an hour's worth of Price is Right in 1 hour. We never stopped tape. We did once when I accidentally gave away a $55,000 Corvette, but we never stopped tape on The Price is Right. We bam, bam, bam. We shot that thing. I mean, I got there in season 32. And they were a well-oiled machine by then already. So it was crazy when I got there. It was crazy how well that show was produced and how well it was done. And Bob was just like any normal guy. He'd come in the morning in his blue jeans and white tennis shoes and a white collared shirt with some stripes in it, with his duffel bag. He had a what was it, a Red Sox duffel bag, and he'd have his clothes over his shoulder, the 2 suits he'd bring in for the day, and just a normal guy. Once his dressing room door closed and the makeup lady got in there and he came out, looking like Bob Barker, the host, man. But he was just a normal guy. And after hours, he'd like to be treated like a normal guy.
Mm. When you said it wasn't expected, but I can see it still hits you quite hard. When you got the alert that said Bob Barker has died today, what was the first thing you thought of?
To pray for him. This guy He was loyal to his wife, Dorothy Jo, right to the end. He wore his wedding ring for many, many. Dorothy Jo died in the 80s, and he wore his wedding ring right to the end. And so I just thought about Dorothy Jo being there to receive him, and hope that she was.
How do you hope America remembers him?
As the legendary game show host they see him as a benevolent man. I mean, this guy gave away money like it was water, and for Bob, it really was. He's a very wealthy man. But I worked with both show hosts, Bob Barker and Andrew Carey, the only announcer to have done that. And they're both very generous people. But Bob's generosity was $1 million at a time. Drew's generosity was more like, $100 to everybody he'd shake hands with all day. But Bob's generosity was like $1 million grants at a time. He was funding new law schools and at colleges all over the country, trying to make lawyers that would stick up for animal rights. So, here he is, this benevolent show host. He's this normal guy who I changed from a wine drinker to a tequila drinker at his home one night in his kitchen, to a guy that gives away $1 million grants constantly all over. So
his love of animals too.
His love of animals, I mean, just unwavering the whole time. I mean, he took fur coats off of The Price is Right because he didn't want to promote the killing of animals for fur coats. I mean, He was one of the first out there doing this stuff, and everybody thought, they call them animal activists, and that's almost a derogatory term or a negative term when you use the word activist these days. But Bob was the first. Bob was the first, man. Have your pets spayed and neutered. Help control the pet population.
Isn't that funny that that's just become in our vernacular now? And he coined it. That's just amazing.
Yep. Yep.
What am I missing, Rich? What else do you want to share?
Bob was a lot like my dad, strict, because he came from that same era. When you made a mistake or were in trouble with Bob, you knew it. You knew it with us. One look from Bob. But Bob was also like my dad in the way that he never held a grudge, at least not with me. I mean, some of the biggest mistakes I ever had on the show, I mean, once they were talked about, it was a done deal. And by, 2:00 that afternoon on the next show taping, we were best of friends again. So he never held a grudge. But he ruled with an iron fist. It was his show. He was not only the host of the show for 35 years, he was the executive producer of the show. So he called all the shots there, especially at the end.
Well, and when people think of The Price is Right, I think even to this day, they think of Bob Barker.
I hope they do. I know the show has morphed and changed a lot, especially since COVID. Now the show is completely moved out of Television City, and it's a brand new set. But I've seen some Polaroid. Wow, shows you how old I am. I've seen some photographs of the new set, and I see some things like the old Goodson Daisy. I see that kind of stuff on the set. I mean, they've tried to modernize it as much as they could, but they've kept a few things that I think will remind you of Bob Barker when you watch it today.
All right. Anything else?
Gosh, brother, not that I can think of. If you can get me on a topic, I'll talk forever about them.
Okay. Let me stop recording.